Now, a topic is the revolution of the liberals. When the revolts of the poor took place in 1848, there was another revolution which was being led by the educated middle class. In some parts of the Europe, independent nation states did not exist yet. Example, Germany, Italy, Poland, Austria, etc. was all governed by the king. Feelings of nationalism were not present. Men and women of the liberal middle class from these parts raised demands for national unification and a constitution. They demanded the creation of a nation state on parliamentary principles. They wanted a constitution, freedom of press, and freedom of association. Frankfurt Parliament. In German regions, there were a large number of political associations whose members were middle class, professionals, businessmen, and prosperous artisans. They all came together in the city of Frankfurt and decided to vote for an all-German National Assembly. Women also participated in large numbers in the liberal movement. But they were denied the voting rights during the election of the assembly. Women were only welcome as observers to stand in the visitors' gallery. They drafted a constitution for a German nation. This German nation was to be headed by a monarchy, but subject to a parliament. One king of Prussia, Friedrich Wilhelm IV, was offered the crown, but he rejected the offer and joined other monarchs to oppose the elected assembly. The opposition of aristocracy and military to the parliament grew stronger. The social base of the parliament was dominated by the middle class. And at that time, the middle class resisted the demands of Parliament, especially relating to workers and artisans, and lost their support. They did not find it much beneficial, and thus the support grew weaker. Finally, the troops were called in, and the assembly was forced to disband. Although the liberal movements were suppressed by the conservative forces, but the old order could not be restored. In the years after 1848, the monarchs began to realize that granting concessions to the liberal nationalist and revolutionary was the only way to end the cycle of revolution and repression Hence, the monarchies of Central and Eastern Europe began to introduce changes which had already taken place in Western Europe in 1815 during the time of Napoleon. So, conservative forces introduced certain reforms. You must be knowing about serfdom and bonded labor. These systems were abolished from the place called Habsburg. This was a system in which the poor farmers were forced to work throughout their life for a very small amount of money, and this old system was removed. Similarly, in Russia, it was removed. The Habsburg ruler granted more autonomy to the Hungarians in 1867.